But first, let's just hear from our startups and founders. Just a quick intro. Just give us the elevator pitch, perhaps, on what you do and what your venture offers. Perhaps, Vincent, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. I'm Vincent. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Maria Health, and our mission is to make health insurance easy to access, affordable for anyone who wants it in the Philippines. To do this, we operate as the first and only health insurance aggregator in the Philippines. Overall mission is that, we want to ultimately insure 1 million lives. That's Maria Health.
Super, thanks, Vincent. Look forward to hearing more. Max.
All right, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Max Thum from HealthMetrics. I'm the VP Revenue of HealthMetrics. So basically what HealthMetrics does is that we are a corporate healthcare solutions platform for companies of all sizes, whether it's small, medium, or even the enterprise as well. So basically what we really aim to do and currently doing is to ensure that employees or even their spouses, their dependents, gets the healthcare on time, whether it's on an insurance plan or whether it's not on an insurance plan. The experience needs to be easy, right? Because people are sick and they need to be able to access healthcare a lot easier.
Super, great. I look forward to hearing more about that. And I think one of the areas I want to just touch on is, insurance versus self-funded and how all of that piece works. But we'll get to that in a second. Neil, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Neil Liang. I'm co-founder and chief product officer for CareVoice. CareVoice's mission is actually to make health insurance more human, right? And that's kind of a play on words because what we primarily do is we help to digitalize the customer journey for health insurance. We started in 2016 when we started working with insurers to provide basically a single platform that can service multiple insurers to orchestrate their customer journeys for their policyholders. And I can talk a little bit more about that later on in the session.
Great. Yeah, I'm really fascinated. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. In fact, our first topic really is just the pain points. What was it that you saw in the market that you thought was, a burning need to be solved? I'm sort of very interested in this area because, of course, in insurance, there are some very substantial big corporates operating in some aspects of, your markets or some aspects of your business. And if it's applicable, it'd be interesting to know why you think that gap existed in the first place when there are those big, well-resourced companies out there. But Vincent, maybe we could start with you and the Philippines story. What was the kind of need that you're looking to solve?
Yeah, so, when we looked at the Philippines, there's just this big kind of problem that, no one was addressing. And so when you look at a country with 100+ million population, right, you have extremely low insurance penetration rates. And, obviously as an entrepreneur, your first question is, why does this problem exist? And, initially, after talking to hundreds of customers, we quickly realized that, for, insurance, there's a fundamental kind of sales and distribution gap whereby, particularly if you're the 99%, so 99% are the individuals or the 22 million households and individuals that are in the Philippines. It could be a small business, from 5 to 10 employees, right? We quickly realized that, people are underinsured because they're underserved. And so while there was a market where, people were looking for health insurance, it was very difficult for your traditional insurer to really actually service this market and do so profitably. So we felt that, there was a need for a direct-to-consumer brand that could help bridge those looking for health insurance or with health insurance providers.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So primarily it's kind of bringing access to healthcare, and I guess for the insurers, bringing them an additional sort of distribution channel.
Precisely.
One quick supplemental question there is, I used to work for an insurer, and there was always a degree of sort of question or cynicism, especially from those who had big sales forces, of the power to use online to sell more complicated products. I mean, life insurance is generally very complicated. Perhaps health insurance is slightly less. But have you found it an issue to actually encourage the insurers to sign up to your platform?
So, you know, I would say for us, we were relatively lucky. You know, when we first went to market, you know, we identified, you know, the demand problem, you know, those that are underinsured that are looking for health insurance. And I think maybe for us, it was just kind of right timing, right place. You know, we had relationships to, you know, some of the largest insurance companies in the Philippines, but there was no denying that, you know, there's this untapped market, and that, you know, if you can leverage technology, you know, these insurance companies, you know, they can not only, like access new markets, but most importantly, can begin to use technology to become more intelligent about, you know, your customer segments, you know, potentially underwriting risk and margin. So for us, you know, there wasn't too much of a kind of friction getting folks to, you know, initially participate in the marketplace for us.
Good to hear. Great. Okay. Super. I want to come back and ask you a couple more questions on that in a second. But let's switch to Max. Max, with HealthMetrics, you explained, I think, you in the corporate health space, group insurance sort of area. Yep. And again, you know, there are quite a few players in that space. But what specifically was the gap that you saw that you're trying to solve?
Sure. So we first started, we didn't start off in the insurance space. So I think with a lot of thought leaders over here as well, you guys start from insurance space. We don't, right? We start from the healthcare side of things. So very early on, when we spoke to clients, we spoke to just, just small companies or medium-sized companies in this case, asking them, how do you actually deal with your outpatient care? So we started out with outpatient care first. So we then realized very quickly there is a gap, like what Vincent mentioned as well. There's a gap where you start asking yourself, I'm pretty sure the large companies have thought about this before, where companies want to be able to fund their GP healthcare, their primary healthcare, and basically where there is probably a product out there. And when we start digging more and more, we realized that the products in the market were very rigid. So they don't actually cater to a lot of companies. And a lot of companies within Malaysia itself, they self-fund their entire outpatient care. And when I say funded, it's very paper-based, right? We talk about people who are just going to a GP, going for consultation at the end of the month. They just submit it back to the HR, and HR reimburse back in their payroll. So that problem persisted. Even for companies where it's reaching out like 2,000, 3,000 different packs as well. Imagine the scale of the problem, right? And you probably realize that there will be a team within the corporate itself just solely doing administration. That was a huge problem. So what we started is to connect the companies directly to GPs, right? So it was a chicken and egg thing, right? Do we get the GPs first, or do we get the corporates first? So we went with the route of getting the GPs first. I think initially, I would say thanks to the first 400 people, first 400 GPs that we acquire, selling them the vision about how we're going to make their life easier. Because our pitch to GPs is really about, corporate healthcare is very complex. Let us help you solve the invoicing part. You deal with all the diagnosis, all the treatments part, right? Whereas for corporate is, let us deal with a GP network. All you need to do is just register your employees in there, and bam, you get the coverage straight away. So we start expanding according to our clients' needs. They wanted a lot more like dental specialists, hospitals in this case. Then we realized that even insurance companies, they have a problem administrating those kind of solutions as well, because they work with third party, and that's where our space is, right? We are in the midst of administrating the problems from a corporate funded perspective. And then that is really where we started to add value for companies who want group insurance for GHS. And then they want to have self-funded in terms of all these flexi, very weird flexi kind of plans, right? Including like telemedicine, including like, medicine delivery and stuff like that. So we realized there was a space for us to play with, and I think it's great. I think over the last 4 years or so, we were able to mix and match both the insurance portion and the self-funded portion pretty well. Yeah.
Just to explain self-funded, Max, just quickly, that I assume is basically the employee is funding additional services. Is that right?
Actually, no. So that's out-of-pocket expenses. So when I say self-funded, it's more towards the corporate actually pays every single bill. You know, if the GPs are charging $100, that entire bill is being paid for by the corporate. It's not through an insurance policy. So that's the self-funded part.
Got it. Yeah. Is that so? The employer is wearing the whole liability. They're paying for everything. Is that common?
It is common. It is common, especially in outpatient care, but not so much in the inpatient, right? Because a large bill of 20,000 to 30,000 bill that comes from a hospital will probably wipe out the entire months of expenses for a small company. So it doesn't make economical sense for them to do it. But if you're talking about companies that is 10,000 in size, right? So they have a choice whether they would pay 10 million in premiums, or do they take the 10 million in kitty, right? And basically just ensure that the risk is within that. And sometimes they will purchase, you know, deductible insurance to just limit the risk that they have. And basically, the larger the company is, it makes more sense. But because the outpatient care is so frequent and the ticket size tends to be small, it's not so much of a financial risk, but rather the administration hassle, right? You're talking about tens of thousands of claims a month, and you probably need the entire team just to manage that. Why do you want to manage that, right?
Yeah. And I guess because you're seeing a lot of the data, aren't you, firsthand? You're seeing all the claims passing. Do you help advise companies who are trying to make that decision between self-funded and maybe, you know, more traditional insurance path?
Yeah, I think we do, because the thing is, when we are collecting data from different clients as well, right? Usually when they work with consultants, consultants out there will probably just advise them in that niche, right? They will do surveys, they will do interviews with other people within that space itself. But what we do here is that we can tell them, okay, what are the other companies in other industries doing, right? So if a manufacturing company who aspires to be an MNC within the region itself, they want to be competitive, right? So they come to us and say that, okay, for MNC in this kind of size, what is a palatable budget that we can play with? What should I actually provide to my employees so that I can actually attract good talent over here? So we become that voice as well for them. And we say that, you know, what works, what doesn't work in this case, especially for, you know, white collar workers or blue collar workers in this case. Yeah.
Okay. And Neil, tell us about CareVoice. So I was having a good look at the website earlier, and you cover quite a lot of bases, don't you? Because you talk about alternative distribution. You've got your CareVoice OS, and it also looks like you're doing some really interesting work in product development as well. So tell us a little bit more about this, and what was the gaps in the market that you saw?
Yeah, so I tell the story a little bit from where we started, right? So we actually didn't start in insurance. We actually started in healthcare navigation. CareVoice is based in China. So when we started the company in 2014, there was a kind of a rapid rise in like an influx of private hospitals or private providers coming into the market. So because the government regulations were loosening, and the government in China wants to eventually have kind of a hybrid system of healthcare. So what we saw as an opportunity at the time was actually in letting consumers kind of guide each other using kind of call it a Yelp for hospitals, right? So when we built that up, we built effectively like a database or information database of all the hospitals across China. And then when we started to have insurers approach us, we saw that as an opportunity to kind of pivot our business more towards insurance, because what we saw at the time was an insurance kind of a shift from managing by policy to more by member. So kind of, and the need to kind of strengthen their engagement with their members, because within China, there was a lot of competition. And health insurance is private health insurance was relatively new to the market. So they really were kind of approaching, you know, I would say 3 different pain points at the same time. One is digitalization. One was kind of shifting from a policy to membership a function, and then also the ability to do it fast. So that's where we kind of got our start when we started shifting towards the insurance direction. So we still continue to maintain a kind of a customer-centric approach. So how do we design a platform that can service multiple insurers? And actually, insurers started to kind of give us more and more functionality to service their members with, besides just healthcare navigation, right? So in some cases, we became the entire platform for when after a post-purchase of a policy, that we became the entire platform from which the policyholder would service their policy. So over time, we gradually built out more functionality on the platform from a kind of a user journey or customer journey perspective. And then also in the last couple of years, kind of staying in tune with, staying in touch with the pain points of insurers, or kind of what we saw as trends in the market was the ability to bring in more and more kind of preventative health services or digital health services into the insurance customer journey, right? So we really see that an optimal customer journey for a health insurance member would include these type of digital health services, and insurers were very keen to bringing that in to the platform. But one is there's kind of a lack of know-how on how to do that. Insurers are great with an ecosystem approach across the value chain when you talk about like brokers, TPAs to process the claims, but when it comes to actually customer-facing digitalization, it is still very much kind of a pain point across the board. So today we actually now have expanded outside of China as well, so to Hong Kong and also Southeast Asia, and we are still in exploration in also Europe. So yeah.
That's super interesting. When you look at sort of extending that sort of experience, so having kind of building a digital experience for a insurer, who do you come across as your competition in that space? I mean, for example, on the preventative health, I mean, Dakadu have made quite a lot of inroads on that preventative side, but your offering is sort of wider than that, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, what we're offering is kind of, we position ourselves as an ecosystem orchestrator, right? So if we use our digital platform as the kind of the central orchestration point for an insurer's overall digital ecosystem, then in fact, we will work with Dakadu for some insurers to integrate their solution into the overall customer journey. We also have functionality that can complement Dakadu, and we also bring in other types of digital health providers that can actually create kind of a meshing effect with what Dakadu, for example, provide.
But I guess the big advantage to insurers of coming to you rather than perhaps do it themselves is that you've already built a lot of those digital connection points, haven't you? Because that is a big challenge with insurers, is linking all of these parts of the chain up. You talked about the TPAs and the third-party administrators earlier, etc. But I guess you've done that, and you've probably iterated that on a couple of different scenarios. So I guess you've got a lot of flexibility in the platform to flex to a specific insurer's requirements. Yes,
that's actually why we rebranded our platform as an OS, kind of to play along words, play with words in that kind of a concept, right? Is that we are really orchestrating it. We may not be the ones who are providing all of the applications on top of the OS, but we have those connection points that we've built over time from our experience with working with multiple insurers. Yeah.
I want to come back and talk about product in a second, because I think you've done some really interesting product work, but we'll save that for a second. Vincent, I want to come back to you and just hear a little bit more about your experience in setting up and driving a marketplace within the Philippines, and some of the complexity perhaps and how you solved it around providing health insurance in a marketplace. Because I would imagine that policies differ so much, the terminology of policies, the inclusions, the exclusions differ so much. You're trying to help me as a person in the Philippines to make the best choice. Give me a sense of some of the challenges that you face and how do you make it easy for the customer to make that choice?
Yeah, so I'd say that, for something as important as health insurance, we've streamlined the process by making, as an aggregator, we make comparison shopping easy. So if you think about Maria Health, right, you have all these uninsured people in the Philippines, right? They literally have to go pick up the phone, call an agent, and speak to a broker. And again, because they're small, it's just, it would take months for, someone looking for health insurance to even get a proposal. So you kind of think about Maria Health in our kind of first horizon, in our first phase, it was to, set up as an aggregator, aggregate the market, so that's primarily kind of kind of the first phase of Maria Health. I'd say some of the challenges, obviously, as being, the first kind of digital insurance aggregator in the Philippines. When we set up shop in 2016, there was no, I'd say, licensing for aggregators. So I'd say for 3 years we were operating unlicensed, and so kind of scary looking back, but I felt that ultimately we were solving a big problem, and ultimately the regulators, they embrace technology, and so early challenges, but I think story of startups is just overcoming these challenges.
And I think services like GoBear have sort of started to look at how do we enable rating of the insurers. Is that a path that you're going down? And another perhaps bigger question is, so I can come to Maria Health and get a view of health policies on offer, make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you extend beyond that first purchase into helping digitize the onboarding of the customer, etc.?
Yeah, so as mentioned, first problem we want to solve was make kind of comparison shopping easy. Now that we've scaled to a kind of decent size, we're actually now building more infrastructure to support a kind of fully digital customer experience, from I'm shopping, comparing, to I'm going to get a proposal, to I'm going to apply online, and paying everything through the Maria Health platform. So that's something we're extremely excited to be working on. We've secured a strategic insurer who's given us the approval to basically kind of digitize kind of the end-to-end process. So we really feel that that's the next area of opportunity for Maria Health to ultimately fulfill our mission. And it comes down to having a fully digital experience, and with that comes efficiency in the insurer's back office. And really that was a lot of our kind of early growing pains, which is not having a efficient back office. So to your point, we're absolutely expanding beyond just policy aggregation, and more towards owning the complete end-to-end customer journey.
Great. I want to come back and ask you a little bit about, how do you distribute Maria Health? How do people know about it? How do people discover it? How do you encourage customer acquisition? But we'll save that and we'll come back to that in a second.
Okay.
Max, I want to go to you next, and just to delve a little bit further into sort of the group insurance aspect of what you guys are doing, and the role of technology in terms of helping the employers provide a better, or you helping the employers provide a better experience through technology. What are you seeing in terms of innovation and technology that's helping both the employer and the employee?
Yeah, so the standard GHS products in the market itself tends to focus very much on admissions. I think most of the time it's just about treatments, right? But of course, with the entire switch towards digital health and the mobility of the employees, I think this is even before COVID as well, right? Employees tend to be moving around a lot more often. So within the regions also, corporates were looking at things that are more than just admissions, right? They were looking at, how can health services follow the employee wherever they go, whether it's on the outskirts, whether it's on, urban centers or wherever it is, right? They want to be very inclusive. So when we work with them, GHS definitely is one of the areas that we actually provide support to our corporate clients. But in the realm of actually developing the product even further, right? So we work with, our insurance partners in this case. How can we actually extend the products and services that is being offered by the policy itself? That would really help a lot. But of course, as you know, the more services that they are providing, that would actually increase the cost of, claims and stuff like that. So they want to be very careful with what kind of services that they are actually providing. Now, I'll give you an example, right? Over the last 1.5 years or so, the increase in people looking for COVID-19 treatments, right? When they get hospitalized, in this case, can the hospitals claim from the policy itself? And I would say a majority of the policy doesn't actually cover for it. Some insurers do take a leap of faith and say that, what, we'll cover for this year itself, right? We're going to have a fund for it. We're going to cover that, right? So these are the larger insurers, but majority of the insurers don't actually want to take that risk. And on top of that, right, because people are very fearful of getting out there, visit GP, getting infected in the clinic itself, they want to be able to access more in online healthcare, right? So telemedicine and teleconsult, in this case, there's a huge demand. Employees are looking for it, employees are looking for it, but whether the healthcare actually covers it, actually the insurance covers it, not really, right? So they usually do it as a value-added service. But end of the day itself, if companies do want a new service during that time itself, they would then say that, we don't have insurance for this, I'm going to pay for it, right? I'm going to put this under the flexi benefit that I have. Basically, sometimes I joke with them, it's a burn pool, right? It's a pool of funds that you burn in this case. So they want to be able to provide the best healthcare and the best convenience to the employees. That's really some of the limitations that the current policies do not actually address, but it's actually complementary, you can think about it.
Yes, yeah. And sticking with technology, just talking, I mean, there was a lot of interest over the last couple of years in terms of biomarkers, wearables, etc. Does your platform, I mean, how is that becoming increasingly an important aspect of kind of group health insurance, or is it a little bit of a, not, I wouldn't say a fad, but is it a very kind of supplemental sort of area? Sometimes it feels like it's a bit of bells and whistles going on top. I mean, how important is that whole biomarker area for you in the future, do you think?
I would say it is an emerging market, definitely, because when we're talking about, things like digital therapeutics, right? You want to have wearables, you want to collect the data in this case. But I think the very honest opinion on this is that, have we actually identified the fundamentals, right? Are we collecting data on parameters, like, your health parameters within the body itself? If you execute a new wellness program with these new wearables, changing behaviors in this case, does it actually change anything in the body, right? We don't have the data. So in many cases, when policies are being sold, and on top of that, they basically put in, certain programs that will give you certain, wearables, and you go eat good food and things like that, and incentivize you. Now, the deeper question is, are you collecting data from the lab itself, right? Do you collect to see whether those programs actually work in the first place? To be honest, corporates are talking about it, but they don't actually have a pool of funds that are dedicated for that kind of programs. It's more to good to have kind of programs. So they start looking for solutions like, if GPs, one time you go there, it's probably going to cost you maybe like $20 in this case. And if you go on a teleconsult, it probably costs you $3. Now, that is something that corporates are willing to pay for because it actually reduces costs and increase the engagement with the GPs or the pharmacists.
Got it. Okay. All right. Interesting. Okay. Thank you for that. Neil, I wanted to ask you a little bit about sort of the product. I know that you've claimed to be able to produce a product in 3 months. I know from experience working in an insurer, that could be 3 years in an insurer. So that's really impressive. And you've got some interesting examples, I think, of sport care and startup care. Tell us a little bit about that kind of product side. How do you ideate new products, and how do you get them out into market quickly?
Yeah, this was something that we actually started working on during the pandemic last year, right? So a lot of the needs for insurers to do kind of more rapid paced innovation. But in fact, I'll tell you just from our perspective, given that we are an ecosystem orchestrator, that the customer experience being serviced on our policy, to us, like products, insurance products are kind of like a template, a way to describe like a template of a solution that can be enabled by our platform, right? So that got us thinking. So we had our first kind of attempt at a product design together with Ping An back in 2018. We were part of a Ping An accelerator program, and the project was to redesign or digitalize redesign a corporate insurance product for startups or for very small companies in China. And then from that, we got to start in kind of more, I would say, population specific, right? So the population specific insurance products. And because insurers all wanted to do that, but they didn't really, usually they have like one or two people in the company or in the organization who are thinking about it, but they don't necessarily have the resources to do it. Yeah. So we started kind of for a period of time during beginning of last year, we started kind of pitching to insurers our platform in this way. And from that, we found kind of a different angle in, which was to say, we can help them either repurpose an existing product that may be not doing so well with a kind of a brand new customer journey using the platform and then launching it within 3 months. Now, if they're developing a product from scratch, I agree that it will definitely take longer than 3 months. But for example, we were able to help Cigna repackage one of their critical illness products and rebrand it with a completely new customer journey in Hong Kong and launch it as a product specific to women.
And are you able to do that because you're leveraging your technology, or is it perhaps because, I don't know, you may be closer to some of the audiences, or because you're working with many insurers, you're seeing perhaps opportunities in that insurer kind of peer group?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Like, one is that with the promise of the data that is coming from our platform itself, with the different types of digital components, they produce data. So it is of interest to, for example, reinsurers. So we've had some very, we've been well engaged with several reinsurers in the region when we were in, kind of using in this mode, right? Like a kind of like driving adoption by new products. So it was validated that the data that's coming out of these, although not going directly to design the products, but to optimize these products over time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Data, of course. Yeah. Very, very important for the reinsurer. Okay. Vincent, I want to go back to you and just talk a little bit more about your running the business, really. So I think you said 2016 you started. How is it? How are you finding? It's 280 million people, I think, in the Philippines, isn't it? Something like that. Big number.
Over 100 million.
Sorry, 100 million. Not quite 280, but 100 million. Still big. How do you, with a population that size, what's your approach in terms of building your business, getting awareness, getting people to see the benefits of what you're doing with that aggregated marketplace? Yeah. So, I'd say that before we start the business, we identified, obviously, people in the Philippines, they want health insurance, they were underserved, they didn't know where to start. And we also discovered that, there were a lot of Filipinos, they were already going online searching for health insurance, but there was no Maria Health or a dedicated kind of direct to consumer brand that was there to service these searches.
Our primary method of acquisition is actually through paid channels. So people searching on Google, paid social. We're also working with channel partners as well that include, bank partners. We're in conversation with remittance companies, given the Philippines is a very large migrant workforce. I think, we've been very fortunate that we've been able to kind of scale our business to this point by kind of arbitraging or just knowing that, there's a lot of searches, just no one is there to fulfill, that need.
And I guess at the moment, if you're kind of first in, probably the competition for keywords means that probably keywords are pretty ROI positive for you.
Yeah. And then particularly with COVID, that changed our unit economics completely. We started out knowing that, there's demand, but not, no competition. And with COVID, not only were we able to continue to get, the distribution, but also the kind of acquisition costs and the unit economics just, hit an inflection point. So we're fairly excited about that.
That's great. So that's a good segue to COVID. I want to just throw a last question to all of you, although Vincent's partly answered it there, which is the impact of COVID on your business, but perhaps more importantly, kind of looking forward to, the remainder of this year into next. Where do you see the impact of COVID taking your business? Before I go to you for some answers around that, just a quick shout out to the audience. There is just about enough time to take 1 or 2 questions. So if you do have any burning questions, now is the time to ask them. Please put them down in the Q&A below. We should be able to get to 1 or 2. But back to the COVID question, Max, maybe we could hear from you what impact has COVID had? I don't like to use the word opportunities around COVID, but what does it mean for your kind of business moving forward?
Yeah, that's true. Let's just talk on the side of the client itself. So before COVID, they were very much focused on retaining talents. So they were coming out with very, I would say, interesting benefit structures, right? That are very much focused on preventive healthcare, how to engage employees and stuff like that. But when COVID hit, it's really about how can I make sure the business as usual part of the business still continues on, right? So it's all about survivability. It's all about BAU stuff in this case. So they switched to a lot in terms of mass testing. Mass testing in the sense that we do regular testing to make sure that, the employees are well tested and you don't have anything that's lurking around in this case. So we dive more in terms of things such as, private vaccination when it's being announced by the government in this case. So we dive into that with some of our healthcare partners, right? So because we have healthcare partners scattered across Malaysia, so we're able to work with them. And it's really much more about how to test faster, how to vaccinate faster in this case. So as you know, I think Malaysia is having one of the highest vaccination rates, but we're still putting our fingers crossed to make sure that, the case numbers actually drop from there, right? So I think the companies right now are sort of like, bandaging their wounds over the last 1.5 years and getting up to speed again. But I think over the last 1.5 years, it's been tough for a lot of companies out there. The unfortunate truth is that we do have some clients that actually went under as well during this time in the hospitality space. So those are very huge organizations that just went under because they couldn't operate, for a prolonged period of time. So I think the companies that have very strong balance sheets definitely were able to weather it out. But even in healthcare, health tech space, right? There are health tech companies that are benefiting from this pandemic, but not all, I can tell you for sure. Yeah.
Okay, interesting, Max. Thank you for that. Neil, over to you. What does COVID look like for CareVoice moving forward?
Yeah, I think just to mention quickly, I think because Max already touched on it earlier, is definitely the changing of kind of expectations for policyholders and consumers especially on the treatment services, right? So the more digital, like virtual medicine and kind of healthcare service, telemedicine. So we are kind of shifting the way that we're shifting to working with some new and different types of partners. Another one is, I think, insurers during kind of the earlier period of the pandemic started to look at kind of more holistically the way that they do customer acquisition, because a lot of different, a lot of health insurance, especially, I think, were traditionally sold offline and also by brokers. But that we see a trend rising in also, obviously, in Southeast Asia, you've seen Grab doing insurance with Zhong'an, but kind of more of embedded insurance is kind of a new way for insurers to holistically look for other ways to do customer acquisition. So that is something that is that we started to look at the end of last year. The ability to kind of expand the flexibility of our platform to be able to also be able to service that kind of scenario.
Okay. And finally, Vincent, you sort of you answered this in part already, but COVID and demand for health insurance, you'd assume that you've seen a big increase there, and perhaps some of the restrictions, lockdowns, has seen an increase in demand. Is that the case in your business?
Yeah, I mean, just to share some helpful stats, we've seen with COVID 60% improvement in payment rates for kind of prepaid health insurance. So prepaid health insurance are like, kind of quick, simple, easy health insurance. If you think about kind of, SMEs or individuals looking for, a comprehensive policy, our lead conversion rates improved by 100%. So, when you have those, kind of impacts your metrics, obviously that just, kind of changes the unit economics of your business.
Yeah.
Say another area where COVID has really helped us out a lot is really accelerating the conversation of kind of digitization with our kind of health insurance partners. We've had this vision of a kind of fully digital kind of customer journey. And, it only took about 3 years and with COVID to kind of finally see that kind of conversation turn from kind of conversation to a kind of commercial agreement. So we do feel that, it's definitely pushed for the kind of digitization of health insurance for the Philippines. And I'd say the, partners and insurers that we work with, those that kind of understand that the future of insurance is a touchless, faceless kind of experience, those will be the ones that will kind of capture the market. And just to share a helpful stat, even the largest kind of HMO and insurance company in the Philippines, they only own 5% of the market, right? And they do this through offline agents, bank channel partners. So can you imagine, in a country like the Philippines with 7,000 islands, if you can build a direct consumer online kind of brand, what that would do to their market share. So we're
big potential. Okay, fascinating. Guys, thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. As always with these things, there's so much more that we could have covered and depth that we could have gone down, but that was really interesting. Thank you so much, and good luck with all of your ventures for the rest of the year and beyond.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric.